views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello and welcome to Open BXRx, BronxNet's special coverage providing you the latest information that matters to you during COVID-19, the coronavirus. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, and today is Tuesday, June 2nd. Coming up, primary election day is June 23rd. League of Women Voters New York chapter will be helping us navigate absentee ballots, upcoming elections, and voting during COVID-19. Then, we'll learn about Mission Helping Hands, a community mutual aid movement providing emergency aid to families in need and volunteering at Bronx Gardens. After that, Revel New York tells us how their new blue mopeds around the Bronx help essential workers get back and forth. And we'll discuss the many challenges street vendors are facing during COVID-19 with the Street Vendor Project. So please stay tuned. Open BXRx starts now. Welcome to Open BXRx on BronxNet. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, inviting you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. Also, if you're watching us on cable, you can continue to stay up to date with our on-screen social media feeds, providing the latest COVID-19 community updates and important headlines. The 2020 New York Democratic primary is scheduled to take place on Tuesday, June 23rd. What are we voting for locally here in the Bronx? How has COVID-19 affected our voting process? And what is an absentee ballot? Joining us now to help us through this and more are Bella Wang, Voting Reform Chair, and Patricia Manning, Board Member at League of Women Voters New York. Hi, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here.
First, I just want to learn generally about League of Women Voters, the New York chapter. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. So the New York City chapter is actually one of the oldest local chapters of the League of Women Voters. So we've been around for, I think, 101 years now, which is a year older than the national chapter. We're really about just enabling voters to do what they do. So that involves voter education, voter registration, but also advocacy for issues of good government.
Thank you, Bella. And Patricia, can you tell us about some of the challenges that voters face? No, actually, why voting matters, especially right now in the Bronx and nationwide, really, right now.
Oh, it matters so much because of the new laws and what's going on. We certainly need leadership that can guide us through this. Voting is so important. People should take it more seriously. It's your voice. People need to understand that when you vote, you are really taking the responsibility of your civic duty, and it's a real obligation. It brings in the resources to the community. It matters so much. Local, federal, state, it matters so much. It's very important. And the League of Women Voters has been very instrumental in trying to boost the vote registration in the Bronx especially. I lead a team yearly. We go to the schools, we go to the different organizations, nonprofit organizations, libraries. Just before the COVID hit, we were at Truman High School. This was during Civics Week, actually, and we registered over 400 kids. We go to Manhattan College. We go to the different high schools. We go to the libraries, and we try to, to really express how important it is. Everyone who is able to vote should be registering to vote. Hopefully, with this COVID virus, the people who aren't comfortable going to the polls will hopefully have requested and received the absentee ballot.
Right. Thank you, Patricia. Bella, can you tell us about some of the challenges that voters are facing through COVID-19 and how the League is fighting to ensure that elections are safeguarded?
Yeah, so obviously with COVID-19, there is just the glaring health and safety issue of crowding at polls. You know, it is a space in which lots of people are touching a lot of objects traditionally. And so there have been concerns, I think, throughout the country, as well as in New York, that this is a difficult situation for a year in which we're expecting, you know, high turnout. Um, and one thing I think that we come to realize at the League is that a lot of the issues that we, our sister chapter, the League of Women Voters in New York State, work very closely on issues involving election reform. And one thing we've really come to realize is, you know, a lot of the things we've been fighting for this whole time have actually been crucial. So one thing, for instance, that we have been really fighting for years now is the ability to vote absentee without an excuse. And it's something that I think in previous years, you know, usually you have to say, I'm out of town, I'm caring for somebody, I'm sick, I have some specific reason that I can't vote. Could I get an absentee ballot? That's what you typically have to do to apply. And, you know, it's been something that's been something we've been pushing for because it's useful for voter access. You know, there's always all sorts of situations are not normally covered in which someone might want to vote absentee. And this year we've shown that it's actually a health issue, a health and safety issue across the country. And so we have really taken up the issue of absentee ballots, as well as, you know, other things that are related to sort of voter protection and voter protection, voter safety, and also enfranchisement in order to kind of use this moment to push those priorities and show that they're important. Now, as it happens, and we can talk about this in a second, the governor signed an executive order to expand the number of excuses accepted for absentee ballots to include a general public health concern for this upcoming election only, so only for June. So if you are merely concerned about catching or spreading COVID, you can now say that that's a reason that you'd like to request an absentee ballot. And so at this point, what we're really trying to do is, now that we've sort of nailed down some of the details that are necessary in order to cope with COVID for elections, we're really now focused on educating the public and making sure that everybody knows about these changes.
Right. Let's dive deeper into the absentee ballots. So several folks have been receiving them via mail on these sheets that you have to fill out in order to apply for an absentee ballot. Can you guide us through these pamphlets that are arriving? How can people acquire one and submit them? What are the deadlines that we should look out for?
Great. So there was an executive order to send a mailed version of an absentee ballot application, not the ballot, but the application. I actually have one here. It comes in a cool envelope that says absentee ballot application enclosed. Inside there's self-addressed stamped envelope, or rather not self-addressed, but a stamped envelope, and the ballot application. So that's been sent to every household mailing address that is officially listed within the Board of Elections for all Democrats in the state, as well as any Republicans that might have a competitive election at this time. So if you are registered with a party, so you can't be non-registered, you can be, if you are registered but not with a party, you won't get this. This is only if you are registered in a competitive election or in a district with competitive election, you will get one of those. If you're out of town, you're not going to get one because it's going to go to the mailing address that's listed in your voter file. So that's why you got it in the mail. If you didn't receive it, there are other options. The easiest thing to do is apply online. nycabsentee.com, that's nycabsentee.com, has a portal for all New York City residents, so not outside of the city, but also city residents. By city, I mean the 5 boroughs, can apply for an absentee ballot and say specifically the reason is they want a ballot that they can submit by mail rather than having to go in person to their polling sites. And that they want to do it in order to maintain public health. You can also call, email, fax the Board of Elections. The contact info for that is at vote.nyc, which is the Board of Elections site for the city. In terms of deadlines, I have it written down, so I'm going to open that up. So in order to get an absentee ballot, you have to send in via one of the methods I just mentioned. The easiest is, you know, either online, or if you got the application in your mail, you just fill it out and put it in the envelope and mail it. You have to postmark it or apply using whatever method by June 16th. So that's a week before the election. You can also apply in person at the Board of Elections office, which is also listed on that website, vote.nyc, by the day before. So if you need to do that, you can. But at that time, so the deadline is June 16th to apply. You can also, during that period, also vote early if you want. So.
Thank you, Bella. Patricia, can you also chime in and talk about the upcoming elections that are happening here in the Bronx, defining the seats and their duties, and all that good stuff that we should know at this point?
Well, basically, we have a pretty amount of people that are running the different seats. They include, we have congressional. People forget about the judges. We have the judges from the civil court. Yes. We have the assembly. We have the state senator. And of course, the president is on the primary as well. However, there's some of these assembly districts where they're highly contested. I think in the 16th congressional district, of course, you have quite a number of candidates running. They're all important positions. And so people really, really need to pay attention to the candidates running, make sure that they are expressing and, presenting what they feel is needed in our government. So just pay attention and read up on them and learn about, what their programs are all about.
Yes, the importance of voter education, right? In my district, District 15 here in Mott Haven, that's South Bronx, that's a packed race. So there are about 12 candidates postulating themselves for Congress. And, the importance of voter education is coming up even more because of how dense that race is, how big, how many candidates there are in that race. Can we also talk about voter education and the Vote 411 tool available at LWBNY's website?
Bill, I think you're more...
Yeah, happy to take that one. So actually, vote411.org is the website for the Vote 411 tool. So it is just a great resource. You can go there, enter in your address, and find out what's on your ballot, as well as any information that may have been submitted to the League of Women Voters about any of those offices or those candidates. So it covers, all the big races, so president, Congress, Senate, Assembly, all that stuff. But in some cases, there will also be local information about local candidates. And this is actually like a collaboration effort, I should say. So it's our national league, as well as I think we collaborate with Rock the Vote in order to provide registration help through Vote 411. So it's great it's a portal for voter registration, finding out what's on your ballot, finding out who the candidates are, and just all you really have to do is enter in your address, or if you want to use the voter registration, it's there to look up as well.
I love it. I've used it in the past. So I really appreciate the Vote 411 tool. And I really suggest that folks go to vote411.org in order to find out more information on their candidates. And thank you to League of Women Voters for collaborating with other organizations to bring that to our constituents, to people in the borough. Just some final closing messages to the community so they can get engaged in voting this upcoming election, how folks can stay up to date with LWBNYC, and some voting information, how to donate, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so we keep our website pretty well updated. It's not the most up-to-date looking, but it is very up-to-date in terms of quality and content. So it's lwvnyc.org. If you would love to donate, we are, I think like a lot of other organizations, struggling a little bit in this time, just in terms of fundraising. And we are doing a lot of work that we could really appreciate your help with, in terms of remote outreach for the census, remote outreach for voter education. There's a lot of work that we'd really appreciate your contribution. And the link for that would be lwvnyc.org/donate.
Thank you both, Bella, Patricia, for your time today and for giving us a little bit of information, or a lot of information, in the regard of primary elections.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you.
For more information on voting rights, upcoming elections, and other issues, you can visit lwvnyc.org, and you can also follow @LWVNYC on Instagram to stay up to date. Open BXRx will be right back.
Across the U.S., several states are beginning to reopen while many are still experiencing statewide and partial lockdown. With storefronts remaining closed, many Americans are finding other ways to shop and spend money. Certified financial education instructor and founder of Clever Girl Finance, Bola Shakambi, explains the shutdown may have a temporary effect on consumer habits.
Most people are working from home, or they still have shelter in place orders, especially in New York and New Jersey. And so there's a lot less for you to be out and about doing other than grocery shopping. And what people are finding is that in the window of time where they would otherwise be, living regular life, which is what we can't do right now, they are using that time to browse online mindlessly.
In mid-March, many Americans fell victim to panic buying, sweeping items off grocery store shelves. But the COVID-19 lockdown may now have some individuals experiencing impulse buying. According to a survey issued by Credit Karma, more than a third of respondents say stress from COVID-19 resulted in an impulse purchase.
A lot of impulse spending does come from stress. And I think when people are stressed, they're trying to find a way to relieve themselves. They're trying to find a way not to focus on what is causing them to be stressed. And in this instance, the pandemic, or causing them to feel anxiety.
Many are turning to retail therapy, but what are Americans buying? CBS reports most overspending is still on grocery store items with an increase on meats and other frozen foods.
The grocery bill is one bill that has gone up, not just because of yourself, but because your family.
While others are finding ways to keep themselves entertained or productive during the lockdown. Referred to as the must-have COVID-19 lockdown accessory by Input Mag, the Nintendo Switch experienced a 33% jump in sales during the same period last year. The Peloton is another brand experiencing a similar increase in sales during the outbreak, but Shakambi expresses that people can treat themselves without sacrificing their financial goals.
It is okay to treat yourself. It is okay to spend your money, but you want to be very mindful and you want to do it within reason. And you don't want it to be at the expense of your financial goals. So it's better to save as much as you can right now and just minimize your spending as much as you can.
With over 30 free classes and resources, Shakambi shares more ways to save and provides tips to improve your financial wellness during the COVID-19 outbreak. To learn more, visit the website clevergirlfinance.com. Reporting for BronxNet, Kib and Aline.
Welcome back to Open BXRx. A Bronx-bred U.S. Army veteran has gathered volunteers to create Mission Helping Hand, an initiative providing humanitarian aid while bringing awareness to issues and disparities affecting communities in the Bronx and Brooklyn. Joining us now is founder of Mission Helping Hand, Bruce Blue Rivera, and Lorean Valentin, program coordinator. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us today.
The first thing I want to learn about is, how did Mission Helping Hand come to be, and why did you decide to start this?
Well, I think at this time, a lot of people who just felt useless or didn't know what to do or didn't have control of their lives. And we realized, I guess, I was sitting home and you think you can only watch so much Netflix, and then you start looking at what's going on in the outside world. And we realized that a lot of these issues that have affected our community for so long have gotten worse, especially food insecurity was one of those. And I had to do something, and I mobilized and got off my couch and looked for ways to volunteer. And while volunteer, I realized that there was a disconnect. You had larger organizations coming into communities that they really didn't have a network or bandwidth or connection to the people in that community. And, as not saying it was a bad thing, but they weren't supplying the need that they wanted. So we try to connect that. I personally delivered food to people in our community because they weren't doing delivery. They were promoting their services probably in the places that weren't as visible to our community. I also started volunteering with other organizations that it wasn't their first primary goal to feed people. They were youth services like Eastside House Settlement, who's a youth education program, but now they're feeding those children and families. So they received a lot of supplies and food distribution, but just didn't have the volunteers or the bandwidth to accept that food. So I just took it upon myself and spoke with the director and, grabbed every friend and guy and girl that I knew that could lift the box. And we unloaded a truck, and we continue to unload trucks for them. And we have started a great partnership with them. So that was kind of how it started, just kind of the want to be active and mobilize and do something, and not just kind of sit and talk about something, but to actually do something.
Right. And Lorean, what made you want to join forces with Bruce to start Mission Helping Hand?
Absolutely. So when my friend Bruce asked me for assistance, we had worked together before on other initiatives. Bruce was actually my boss. Um, and he asked for my assistance. I live right in the heart of the South Bronx. I started talking to him about what I was seeing, looking at the pantry lines and how long they were and how some folks were turned away. And it was really hard to see. I'm a caretaker for two elderly people in my family. And I'm watching elderly stand online to get their food and their supplies because there was no other means for them to get food. So when Bruce told me what he was doing, I automatically signed up to help him on the back end with administrative stuff. And he then told me he wanted sustainable food source. And, you know, I am a community organizer at heart. I had personal relationships with some folks in the community gardens. He had no idea about that aspect. And it was like a match made in heaven for what we wanted to do.
I know that you have volunteer opportunities for gardening and as well as food distribution. I was able to join you both, and I had such a wonderful time, and it felt so good to do something voluntarily with you. I know that it's all community based, and like you're operating this with so little bit of people, but with so much passion. So can you just talk to me about the volunteer work that goes on in gardens and as well as the pantry distribution?
Yeah. Well, volunteering is different for everyone, and we realized that very early on. And I think us opening different venues of volunteering, we have our garden project where you can come in and kind of maintain the garden. Unfortunately, a lot of the gardens lost a lot of their assistants because a predominant amount of the volunteers were elderly who were scared to leave their home. So when we partnered with them, we partnered them in exchange to give them the manpower, to get them growing and to get them back on their feet. But we also going to use that growth and that crop to feed those in need. So it was a very symbiotic relationship. We have unloading trucks, so guys, who don't really want to be, out online helping and who don't consider themselves activists, but can lend an arm or just lift something. We also have food distribution, outreach, any way that you can help is really, our motto is together we can. And everybody has a different skill sets. And we really want to really use what you're good at. If you're great at writing, if you're great at photos, we have a friend who's a photographer who took photos of just everything that's going on and kind of documenting this very historic time that we're living in and how we're dealing with it and how we're surviving. These are things that are really important to us because we're not just an organization that started, we started during the COVID-19, but we're not going to end when it's over. We don't know when it's going to end, but these are things that our communities have dealt with for years, and we plan to be around for a long time assisting those families.
Thank you, Bruce. Lorean, can you tell us about the two gardens that you have a relationship with right now with Mission Helping Hand?
Absolutely. So the gardens that we're working with right now is the Rainbow Garden of Life and Health. It's on 157th Street and Melrose Avenue, which is pretty much almost the middle of the South Bronx. And then a little closer towards the edge in the Mount Haven area, we have the Brook Avenue Garden is Brook Park, Friends of Brook Park. It sounds like it's a park. It's a huge garden. And right now we're also developing relationships with the folks from Latinos Unidos Gardens. And we just connected with the president of the South Bronx Garden Coalition. So we're working to do not only to assist with the garden work that they need there, but also to assist with food distribution. They have food, now they need assistance with logistics of distribution, and that's where we're planning to fill in the gap. Also, what we're finding is that these community gardens have been an education source for the schools near them. So not only did they lose the consistent volunteers that they had, which mostly was made up of elderly, but it was also made up of school students who had already started planting beds in their gardens. So now we're looking to link them together, even though they're at home, they're trying to put in that education piece. So, there's a lot of these folks are operating on some old school methods, and we're bringing in the technology piece as well now.
I love that. I'm going to through at the end with links and resources on the bottom of the screen, but I want you guys to kind of like help me out with that right now in case anybody's watching and would like to help volunteer. How can they get in touch with Mission Helping Hand to help out?
I mean, it's the age of the internet, so you can get us a website. We have missionhelpinghand.com. We're also on Twitter, Instagram at Mission HHNYC. It's a little bit shorter, not as much to write. You can email us. We do have a volunteer registration. You can tell us what's your availability, what type of volunteering you're interested in, and we're going to try and fit you at the best place that really can help the community as much as they can.
And a question for both of you, just about the importance of community solidarity and working together to uplift the community during this pandemic and even after it and before it.
Being part of the Bronx, if you're from the Bronx, I think there's an unspoken camaraderie. We are more than community. We are family. The mom and pops that created shops and those neighbors and, somebody's grandma who lives upstairs who you check on. And, these are the things that our community was built on, out of necessity. Bronx has always been a stepchild of New York City. We've always needed to fend for ourselves, going back to, the young lords. Everybody knows about the Bronx from our history. But what we need to really focus on is our future and the youth. And so we felt like this was a great opportunity to not only nourish, help, but also revive activism in our community. I think more now, younger people have kind of lost that connection. And I think if we can use this as a catalyst to really push forward and say, hey, we need to be sustainable. We need to start growing our own food. We need to start educating ourselves. We need to start empowering and helping these generations that fought so hard for the Bronx. Let's be their backbone now. Let's let them take a seat and kind of direct traffic for a little bit while we get our elbows in the work. So that's what I think it is. And that's been an underlying thing, and it's kind of grown organically. It might not have been the original plan, but just meeting everyone and the outpouring of support from so many different types of different communities, whether it be gay, lesbian, vegan, Latino, African American, white, you name it. We have outpouring of support from so many different types of communities because that's what we are. We are that patchwork of a community.
And Lily, if you want to chime in.
Sure. The way I was brought up, I'm a private school baby, if you will, of the Bronx. But my family and friends went to public school in the area, and I was taught that once you reach a certain level, you're no longer privileged. You have to come back and give back you have to turn around and give back what you've learned and invested into the community. This is a grassroots operation, and we're divesting all our energy into it because, not to be negative, but the truth be told, the disparities, the food scarcities that we've already seen were there prior to this pandemic, and now it's already amplifying. We're seeing certain organizations get more food to them versus other organizations. We will not name them because this is not a political ploy, but we have to be honest about what we're seeing in the streets. And other organizations are getting scarce resources to feed their members or feed members of the community. And it's about equality right now. Everybody needs food. Whether you're working or not, there's a lot of folks that are still furloughed. Their hours are limited. And more so than ever, we have to band together to help one another and make sure that people aren't using pride as a mean not to get what they need in order to continue to sustain and, grow past this pandemic.
I heard that. And, best of luck, and I'll see you out there soon. I'll be back to volunteer.
Look forward to having you volunteer anytime. Come on down and get your hands dirty with us. Let's get, sweaty all for a good cause and just,
Thank you. Folks, every little bit helps, as the Mission Helping Hand bio says on Instagram. And to volunteer today and support the mission, you can follow them at Mission Helping Hand NYC on Instagram and visit their website at missionhelpinghand.com to learn more and register as a volunteer. See how you can help today. BXRx will be right back.
Who's most at risk for coronavirus? People over 65, people with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes, people undergoing cancer treatment, and people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people. Avoid crowds. Stay home if you can. Wash your hands frequently. Learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov.
Why should young people care about the spread of coronavirus? Well, we know that people with underlying medical conditions over the age of 60 are at highest risk, but they've got to get it from somebody.
So we're asking everyone to be selfless for others so that we can protect those who are most susceptible.
Not going to bars, not going to restaurants. It all just means physical separation so that you have a space between you and others.
For more information on how you can social distance, please go to coronavirus.gov.
Welcome back to Open BXRx. Have you been seeing a surge of blue mopeds around the Bronx? That's because Revel, an electric moped service, arrived in our borough back in April. The company aims to provide a safe way to commute for all and has been offering free rides for essential healthcare workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining us now to speak more about it is Frank Reig, CEO of Revel. Hi, Frank. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I want to get straight into it. Tell us a little bit about Revel, its inception, and its arrival here in the Bronx.
Yeah, so Revel was a shared electric vehicle company. We started about 2 years ago in Brooklyn. So we're a homegrown New York company. I'm a native New Yorker myself. Yet, can't seem to leave the city. Started 2 years ago in Brooklyn and really have just grown responsibly since then. So we've continued to expand the operating area in both Brooklyn and Queens over the last 2 years. And about 10 weeks ago, we launched Manhattan. And then soon after, we launched an operating area in the South Bronx. And it's been going really well.
Welcome to the Bronx. And, thank you for bringing the service here. I wanted to ask you about the shift in providing free rides for essential healthcare workers. How did you start this initiative and how does it work?
So we started that initiative about 9-10 weeks ago. That was, I believe it was March 20th was the exact day the initiative went out. So it was free rides for all healthcare workers, whether you work at a dermatologist office or a hospital or a pharmacy, anything involving in healthcare, you had free rides with us over the last 9-10 weeks. It was just something we just thought had to be done, right? When you think of everything that was happening in March and April and all the terrible news and everything that you saw, what was going on in hospitals, it just made sense, especially when you think about a lot of people that work in hospitals. They need to get to work somehow. And I think everyone is a little, I wouldn't say afraid, but I think thinking twice about getting onto a bus or a train right now.
Right. And when Revel heard about the MTA shutdowns, you also transitioned to 24-hour service for other essential workers. Can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
That was another thing that just made sense to us. When the governor and mayor announced the subway in New York City was no longer going to be 24/7, was shutting down, I believe, from 1 to 5 a.m., we just thought, okay, I think now is a good time to expand to 24/7 because guess what? Some people, their shift does end at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and they need a way to get home. So again, that was just something that we thought just made sense to do.
Right. Something else you have that I wanted to bring up is the restaurant partnership as well.
So that was something, so my personal background is I came to running an electric vehicle company through a weird path. But I used to work in restaurants for about 4 or 5 years earlier in my career after college. So I just have a soft spot in my heart for, local independent restaurants, people just trying to make it. And then you hear this news about, third-party delivery apps charging them commission fees and 30% and all of this. So we just thought, let's work with the small independent restaurants and coffee shops and even bars, really anybody in the hospitality industry that wants to do delivery, trying to survive this from a business perspective. And we gave about 40 restaurants, I believe was the last time I checked, free access to Revel to do those deliveries.
Wow, that's wonderful. I wanted to learn about how the riding works. How can people use Revel? Who can use it? And what are some of the costs?
Yeah. So I would say step one is you need a driver's license. It is a vehicle, or maybe I've seen it in the street. This is not an e-bike. It's not a kick scooter. This is a moped. It's a motor vehicle. It rides and parks in the street. It has a license plate. to get that license plate. Every user that gets in our vehicle has auto liability insurance already baked into the ride. So there's really a home for this vehicle on New York City streets. There's a regulatory environment already. I think it's one of the reasons why it's been so successful over the last 2 years and why we've been able to grow. But again, just going back to your question a bit, all you need is a driver's license. You need to download the app. You need to go through registration flow. And before you know it, you'll be out riding on an electric moped.
All right, so you just approach the Revel on your block, wherever it's parked, and you can scan the phone. How does that work? Is it just
so I would download the app ahead of time. So if you just go to any of the app stores, just type in Revel, we'll pop right up. It's a short registration flow. You need to take a picture of your license. You need to take a selfie so that we actually know it's that person on that license. So we do have some strict controls during the sign up feature. And you should be signed up in 5-10 minutes as long as everything goes well. And you can be out riding. So I would say download the app, register before you actually get on the streets and go looking for a Revel.
Right.
And then, like a lot of dockless mobility, once you open up the app and you're a registered user, you'll see where all the Revels are in the Bronx. So you'll say, okay, there's 1-2 blocks away. Let me reserve it. So we have a reserve feature, 15 minutes for free. So reserve it, walk on over to it. You hit start ride in the app. It's an electric vehicle, so it just turns on. Helmet case unlocks. You throw a helmet on, and you're off. So it's a pretty seamless, easy process.
Got it. Thank you, Frank. And, as you heard, folks, if you're thinking of riding Revel, you need your license. So I just want to get into recommended riding safely rules and, how can people cautiously ride during COVID-19? I've seen, there are a few worries about injuries that have happened. And I just wanted to address that real quick. Can you give us a comment on that? And also just give us a few pointers for people to ride safely.
Yeah, I mean, not only is it state law, it's our law. If you ride a Revel, you need to wear a helmet. There are 2 helmets provided on every single moped, and it is there for you to use, and we mandate it to be used. I would say in general on safety as well, that registration flow, it really does a lot for us, requiring a license. And not just requiring a license, but also making you take a picture of it, take a selfie so that we know it is that person on that application. So we have a lot of controls in just who gets on our vehicle, and making sure it's the right person with a license to get on that vehicle. And currently, you do need to be 21 and older to ride a Revel. That's been a rule since day one.
And some folks also have sanitation concerns, with COVID-19 and the pandemic, people wearing masks and gloves at times. Can you tell us about how Revel is ensuring that these mopeds are cleaned regularly?
Totally. So these are fully 100% electric mopeds. So because of that, there's a battery in every moped that needs to be changed in the Bronx, where we're seeing really high ridership literally every day. So every single day, my team, which by the way, full-time employees, we don't use the gig economy in any way. Any person working with Revel has a t-shirt that says Revel on it, has full health benefits, has an actual living wage. So that's just something we've done from day one. So that employee is going to that vehicle, doing a full clean down every time they swap that vehicle. So wiping the handlebars, the brake levers, the helmets themselves with helmet cleaner. And then on top of that, we provide disposable helmet liners in the helmet case so that people maybe want, something between their head and the helmet themselves. And then a few other things we're rolling out over the next few weeks is one-time use sanitary wipes. That'll be in the helmet case as well. So before you ride, if you want to wipe down the handlebar yourself, you can do that. And then finally, we're also doing 2 other things. We are offering the ability to purchase a helmet at a discounted price through some e-commerce partners that we're setting up right now. So that should be live in the next week or 2. So if you want your own helmet, you can get one at a discount, and we'll set that up and make it really easy for you. And then the last one is just a more permanent headliner that's Revel branded, and we'll be putting those in all the helmet cases shortly as well. So that'll happen with the one-time use sanitary napkins. So we're trying to do everything we can here to keep these vehicles super clean and safe.
Right. You also have lessons I read on your website. There are ridership lessons. How do those work, and how can people access those?
Sure. So we have done one-on-one lessons for free since we launched back in 2018. So we've literally given thousands of lessons at this point to users throughout Brooklyn and Queens. Because of coronavirus, it sort of put a crimp in the plans of one-on-one lessons and being that close to somebody. So we're rolling out a full 15-minute lessons video shortly. It seems like everything is coming out in the next week or two, but this is one of those things as well. And then we'll just respond to as the city starts to open up and come out of quarantine, and when we offer lessons again. I'm hoping within the next month or so. Clearly, the most important thing is our employee safety, and we just need to make sure that we're at a point where that's something we can start doing again. And then once we do, we'll always have them at our office in Brooklyn, and then we'll also do traveling lessons like we did last summer. So on Saturdays and Sundays, we'll be going to different neighborhoods. We'll do an email blast beforehand, let people know to sign up for those lessons. Hey, we're coming to your neighborhood to give lessons. Come on by. So that's something I hope to have up and running again in the next month.
Right. Every time I see a Revel vehicle or a moped around the streets, I'm just like, I feel like I'm in a different country, because like in Dominican Republic, we have so many, and here I've never really seen that many scooters. So I think it's wonderful, and thank you, Frank, for your time and, you know, telling us more about it. Just some final comments and messages to the community that's thinking of using Revel and those that are currently using it already.
I would just say, give it a try. It is a lot of fun. I think once you use an electric moped, you're not going to look back. So. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Folks, to begin riding with Revel, you can simply search Revel in the iPhone App Store and Android Play Store and download. Open BXRx, we'll be right back.
As stay-at-home guidelines are still in effect in New York City, the Mark West Center for the Arts has adapted. Since March, the center has found innovative ways to be of service to communities by hosting virtual masterclasses for artists and fundraising for mothers. Executive Director of the center, Mark West, explains.
We partnered with Ryan Wild. She's a Bronx-based musician, and we organized the Mother's Day drive with her. And we were pretty successful in that we were able to give $50 per child to each parent that applied, each mother that applied.
Artistic Director of the center, Brandon Smith, says they use community engagement to tackle the needs of people. The center organized a food drive and also put together a COVID-19 relief grant for artists.
Okay, we're in the pandemic. What do they need? Supplies. You know, who's our audience? The artists. So we used, adding, okay, we're going to give you materials because we had these things. Art stores aren't really open. And we just wanted to really make sure that there was sort of like a conversation that we were having within our artist community.
It's been reported COVID-19 has caused depression and anxiety due to isolation and many other factors. Wes experienced this firsthand when he lost a friend that committed suicide during the stay-at-home mandate. After the traumatic experience, Wes and Smith decided they needed to advocate for people dealing with depression.
Unfortunately, we lost one of our artists during the quarantine, committed suicide. Mm-hmm. And we're doing something to honor him and to talk about reaching out if you have depression or if you're in a vulnerable situation.
Smith expresses the importance of checking in on your loved ones and making your mental health a priority.
I think it's really important to use this time to check in with yourself and know that whatever you're feeling is okay. And also that you, just because you see someone else doing something doesn't mean that you need to be doing that either. You know, again, this time is really to take care of your mental health and your body.
To learn more about what Mark West Center for the Arts is offering amid COVID-19, or to sign up for their June Quarantine Art Showcase, visit houseofmarkwest.com. Reporting for BronxNet, Ashley Tiffany.
Welcome back to Open BXRx. There are as many as 20,000 street vendors in New York City. Before COVID-19, vendors who are mostly immigrants and people of color have struggled to make ends meet. Despite significant profit loss during this pandemic, many are still risking their health and showing up for work. Here to tell us more is Mohamed Attia, director of the Street Vendor Project. Mohamed, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure, thank you for having me.
First, I want to start off with learning about Street Vendor Project. You're the director of the Street Vendor Project, and you're also a street vendor. You were a street vendor, right? Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, sure. So the Street Vendor Project is a member-led organization that advocates for street vendors. We serve as their voice in the city and the state government. Our main purpose is to improve the working conditions of street vendors. And of course, we provide legal service and small business services to our members.
Right. And when we talk about the challenges that street vendors face, even before COVID-19, can you just tell us about that? And now, how have those challenges amplified during the pandemic?
Well, the list of challenges is very long. I can go like for hours and hours, but briefly, I can tell you that street vendors are dealing with an outdated system that governs street vending in New York City, a system that allows street vendors to operate in a system where they cannot obtain their permits or licenses from the city and work in a legal way, a system that allowed of the creation of an underground market for the food vending permits that most food vendors are dealing with now. So you can imagine that when the city limits the number of permits and vendors cannot go get their permits and work in a legal way, they have to rent a permit from someone else and pay them crazy amount of money, like up to $25,000 to use someone's permit for 2 years. And every 2 years, they have to go back to the same person, ask them to renew the permit, and even offer them more money. So that's maybe the main issue that street vendors are dealing with, along with the enforcement and dealing with the NYPD and getting like really big fines for very minor and tiny violations.
What are some of those action items that you are demanding for street vendors?
Well, we have been asking the city, especially for the past 6 years, to increase the number of food vending permits, because we have seen the impact of the cap on the number of permits on the food vendors, and we have seen how risky it is for a lot of people who are working without a permit now, who just go out every day trying to make a living, trying to make a few dollars a day to survive, and how they are like so vulnerable to get arrested and get really high fines. They can receive $1,000 ticket for selling without a permit, and that's a mistake. That's not really their choice. They are not making that choice to sell without a permit. So that's maybe one thing we have been asking for the past 6 years. We have started our campaign back in 2014, asking the city to increase the number of permits, to legalize the work of all these people, and also to create an opportunity for people to grow. Imagine those vendors who deal with the underground market. They are spending tens of thousands of dollars every year that's going to someone's pocket, that is not being added up to their net profit at the very end of the year. I mean, those people have the potential to grow their business and go from a street car to a street truck to a restaurant to even a bigger company, but that possibility is being blocked by the current system.
Mohamed, can you also tell us about the contributions of street vendors? You know, the vendors that we know and love, the food that we know and love in our communities. There's also a financial contribution to the city's economy that you can speak of. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, you mentioned earlier in your opening that there are about 20,000 street vendors in New York City. That's true. 20,000 street vendors means 20,000 families are being supported by the street vending business. The business itself is very, very huge. Like a study that came out in 2012 estimate the economic impact of the street vendors in New York City to add up $293 million to the local economy of New York City. More than $70 million being paid in taxes. More than 18,000 jobs are being provided. And like, let's be honest, the study was very conservative. So we know and we estimate that even the reality will be a lot more than that. We know how many jobs the vendors create. We know tens of thousands of people are benefiting from the jobs that the street vendors create, not only the vendors themselves, but look at the supply chains, look at the commissaries. There are 106 commissaries, food garages that keeps the food carts and trucks in them. A lot of jobs, a lot of economic opportunities are out there for the street vendors, and the street vendors contribute to the economy and also serve their communities. Everywhere we go in New York City, we will find street vendors serving their communities, serving the food deserts, providing fresh produce to food deserts that don't have access to like a half an hour walking distance from a supermarket. You can find that down the block where you live on a fruit and vegetable cart. And also, let's talk about the culture. Let's talk about how street vendors represent the culture of New York City, represent the diversity of New York City. When we go to Corona and find more than 20 or 30 cuisines in like a matter of 5 or 6 blocks around Roosevelt Avenue and Broadway in Corona, Queens, we see the diversity of the neighborhood being reflected on our streets.
And, sales normally for street vendors during this time would be absolutely different because there will be more traffic coming in and out of the street. But because of social distancing, this has completely drastically changed. Can you tell us a little bit about that as well? The economic impact to many street vendors.
Yeah, it all happened at the beginning of March when we have received many phone calls from our members. And as you mentioned, I was a food vendor myself, so I'm still really attached with the food vending community. And I know hundreds of people who are vendors, and they all have been calling and texting, asking, what the hell is going on? What's happening in New York City? Why my business is like going really, really bad? Why I'm losing my daily sales? And a lot of people, since the first week or two of this pandemic, have stopped working completely because they found out that it's not worth it to go out every day. We have seen people spend 12 hours working in the streets and made only $20 sale. You can imagine that that doesn't cover anything. It doesn't cover any of their expenses. They still have to pay the supply. They still have to pay for the commissary, the rent. They still have to pay for the driver that will tow the cart back and forth from the commissary to the spot where they work. So a lot of them have stopped working, and a lot of them were like, okay, let's see what the government can offer us. Let's wait for the government support. And sadly, soon after, we all found out that the Small Business Services Department programs and the SBA programs are not really helpful to street vendors for many reasons, including that most of them are undocumented. So they don't have social security number. They don't qualify for any government support. A number of them don't really have that complicated and sophisticated documentation in keeping their business. You can imagine that many vendors don't have a business bank account, and they don't have a payroll and a W-2 and all of these documents that usually the SBA will require for your business to qualify for grant or a loan.
The Street Vendor Project is offering help and assistance through an emergency fund. Can you tell us more about that and how people can help, donate, or reach out in any way?
Yeah, sure. So soon after, we started the Street Vendor COVID-19 Emergency Fund because we knew that street vendors are struggling at the moment and they don't have any means of support. So we issued this emergency fund. We launched it. You can find it on our social media. You can find it on Facebook and Twitter. And what we are doing basically is like raising the money and sending cash assistance to our members, sending them a gift card of $300 to support them during such a crisis. And so far, we have seen the amazing support from New Yorkers all across the board. We have raised more than $135,000. We have seen people shipping in as much as they can. We've seen donations of $6 and $7. We have seen donations of $10,000. We have seen big organizations and foundations throwing thousands of dollars into the fund because everyone knows street vendors. Everyone cares about street vendors. That's our neighbor. That's our family member. That's our best friend. We see every single day in the morning to buy our food. So I really encourage everyone to look out for their fellow New Yorker, for their neighbor and their family member who is working every day at the corner serving them. Please ship into this fund. Any donation will help, and every dollar you donate will go directly to the street vendor to support them during this crisis.
Thank you, Mohamed. So we can try to give a little bit of assistance to some vendors who might be tuning in. Are they allowed to vend during COVID-19? Are permit applications still open? How can they contact you for help? Give us a little bit of guidance in that regard.
Yeah, sure. So all food vendors are allowed to work. According to the executive order by the governor, all food vendors are considered essential businesses. So we don't have a problem with that. And we can tell that a number of vendors are working now. So especially fresh produce vendors, we have seen them in many neighborhoods. They are still operating. Of course, business is not the same. It's a lot less than before, but it is something, which is better than nothing. So yes, for all food vendors, yes, you can operate. Please be so careful. Like manage your business in the best way, follow all the instructions and all the precautions that the CDC have been issuing in the past couple of months. To all vendors, all street vendors, including food vendors, of course, please follow us on social media. Follow us on Facebook at Street Vendor Project. Follow us on Twitter at Vendor Power. And it will be very helpful to go over our Facebook page and watch the trainings we have made. We have made a number of trainings in partnership with many organizations, but the really most relevant one and the most recent in the past couple of weeks, we have partnered with NICUSH on a health and safety training for street vendors during the COVID-19, explaining exactly what you need to know about COVID-19, about how to keep yourself and your customers safe during this crisis. I think every single vendor in the city need to watch this. This training we have conducted 4 times in 4 different languages. In English, Spanish, Mandarin, and Arabic. So whatever your language is, hopefully you will see it there. The resources are out there. For non-food vendors, to be clear about that, they are not considered essential business. They are not allowed to open yet till the pause executive order is discontinued. So we really encourage people not to work because they can be a subject to fines. And we encourage people who want to work, who are able to work and keep up their business, please be super careful, take care of yourself and your health and your customers' health. And you can reach out to us through our social media. You can reach out to us through Facebook, send us a message. We'll definitely respond to you ASAP. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and we'd really love to connect with you all.
Thank you for joining us today, Mohamed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Folks, to stay connected, you can follow at Street Vendor Project on Instagram and visit their website, streetvendor.org, for updates and to check out their Street Vendor COVID-19 Emergency Fund. That's all for our show today. Thank you for tuning in to BXRx. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, wishing you and your family safety and wellness now and always. Until next time.